welcome back and thank you for listening to Biz 15. We're going to take things back to where we originally started on this podcast, where we're going to start listening and talking about leadership and management. So we've been doing a little bit of research, and actually as a business, the level of inquiries that have been coming into us is kind of every other about staff developments, all based around leadership, management and future leaders of the business and the capabilities they've got to be able to manage change. It's kind of made me take a step back and actually do a little bit of research on just some facts and figures. So actually we've realised that through doing some data research that 79% of employees will actually quit or look to get another job based on inadequate appreciation from their managers, which is staggering really when you think about it. It's like for every 10 people, 8 people will actually leave if they've not had proper management. And out of that, 69% of the up and coming generation are actually looking at leadership and management capabilities and training, and if that workplace does not support their future development, they're not going to be interested in that role, and they're going to be going for businesses that. It proves that businesses really need to look at retaining their staff rather than recruiting, because if they don't have this infrastructure in place, they're not going to be able to then retain their staff, which is going to lead for a massive gap. From your role, Andrew, when you've been going out and speaking to businesses, why are businesses at the moment investing in kind of the future leaders of their organisation?
I think obviously all the things you've just mentioned are what's going to attract people to a business in the first place, and also then make them want to stay there. If a business is demonstrating that they're investing in their people and looking at actually encouraging them to work with that organisation to grow and develop themselves and grow and develop the organisation at the same time, then that gives them something. Yes, people are always going to be driven by income, because it's what people go to work for, but people are now looking for working with an organisation that they get something back in other ways, and that is quite often development, and certainly that's what the new generation of people that's coming through are coming to look for, in terms of, yes, I can come in and do this job, but where's that going to take me, what's it going to give me? And they will look for an organisation that is spending not just actual money but spending the time on developing their employees. Well,
there was something in the news, wasn't there, that said that there's, for the first time ever, I think, that there's been a shift between there's more roles, there's more jobs being advertised than what they are people looking, which tells me that there's either a shortage of people, granted probably is, but actually if there's a shortage of people, is that because people are staying in their jobs because of job security, so they're not actually in the market to look for a new role? So if there is a lack of leadership capabilities, but actually as a business we are getting daily inquiries that are coming in around leadership and management, that actually maybe businesses are now starting to look at, we need to train our staff, we need to retain them, which means they're not looking. But actually if the business is growing, that's where the vacancies are coming from, but there's just a lack of talent that's available for people to go into these roles, which is quite interesting really, because I've never, from the whole time that we've been working on in Brook and doing leadership and management, we've never really seen as much volume coming through before. What do you think about that?
I think it is that there's probably a number of different reasons why there's not that pool out there, but I think the pandemic has made people view things differently, and I think they're probably not as inclined to jump ship. However, it still comes down to the fact that people will move if they're not happy where they are, and I think that one of the big things is people started to realise that the people that work for them are important, and they've got to look at that and got to develop that. And I think certainly from the stuff that we've done is sometimes somebody gets to a management position in an organisation basically because they've been good at doing a job. but that doesn't necessarily mean they've got those skills. And I think what is happening now at the moment is people's actually recognising that and actually preparing to hold a hand up and say, I need some support on this, I need some help, I want to be a good manager. And I'm using the word manager there because that's what they view themselves at. But then, as we start working with them, you turn them into a leader because you change the way that they view that role. And I know that's probably something that will come out later in this discussion, but there is a distinct difference between a manager and a leader.
And we did the skills diagnostic contract last year with Calderdale and Kirklees businesses. Some stats that I've got here is that 47% of businesses predicted that leadership or kind of executive level skills would be a shortage for them in the future. I'd actually say it's more than that. The ones that they pretty much, I'd say 85% of those businesses we engage with on the skills diagnostic survey that we did, there was literally, I'd say more than every other, we're saying we do not have the leadership capabilities to manage this team moving forward. Hence the reason now why there's more training funding and more infrastructure, more emphasis being put on leadership and management, and more specifically around digital leadership. So actually managing teams to utilise digital technology to lead their teams better, to make them more productive, because there's such a big emphasis on it. One thing you touched on there between leadership, there's a difference between a leader and a manager. Do you want to elaborate on that? What in your eyes and your experience, what's the difference?
I suppose for me, the way I always describe this is a leader has people that follow them, a manager has people that work for them. The word manage means that they manage situations, whereas a leader will try and be proactive, they'll try and anticipate where there might be issues, and it's the good leaders are the ones that will invest time and money in developing people that will come through to support them. A good leader as well will also employ the right people around them, so that a leader doesn't have to be good at everything in that business. What they have to be good at is getting the best out of everybody in that business, and by being a good leader and by displaying those sort of traits, people will naturally follow you and they'll gravitate towards you.
I think it's interesting because I think the whole thing around leadership and management now isn't just getting the most out of the people, it's about creating the environment to get the most out of them. One of the big things at the minute is kind of that work-life balance between kind of creating a healthy working environment that actually people are more motivated to come in, they've got more energy, they feel like they're kind of their time's managed better, so then they can actually spend more time and more focus areas on the high value areas that they need to focus on their role. So how are businesses that you're working with kind of encouraging that healthy working environment?
I think a number of ways, and a lot of that is actually just reviewing the systems within there. COVID and the pandemic actually did force changes on businesses and force people to work from home. And I think one of the things that a lot of organisations saw off the back of that is that actually you can trust your staff to work remotely. You can trust them to do a good day's work. And, you know, it then brought in that they need to be looking at different management styles, because, you know, you experienced this when I joined this organisation in the second lockdown, and you were managing me coming into this business remotely, and it's a different set of skills that you have to use, and I think people's identified that, and they'll now look for some support around that. This is new to me, how can I do this, can you give me some support around doing this?
Yeah, and this is the thing, it's having the right people around you that are actually going to not exploit the situation that you're giving them. For example, we were at the event yesterday in Rotherham Stadium, and it was all about kind of retaining staff and retraining. And one of the examples that they used was a around kind of leadership, management training academies, but then also looking at hybrid working, not coming into the studio as much, the level of kind of trust that is given to people to be able to work from home. They've not got travel costs, they've not then got commuting time, so they've actually got more time for themselves, so it makes them kind of a healthier individual, kind of mentally, to be able to get the most out of them. But then it's kind of like, how do you manage that to be able to turn it into a success? I guess that's the biggest challenge that nobody really knows, is because we're still getting used to it, really, especially in really remote teams, that it could be a challenge because you wouldn't know them kind of individually. For example, I went to another meeting yesterday with one of our stakeholders who I'd basically just been dealing with on Teams for the last 2 years, never met her before. It's great to see her in person. She said I was completely different in person, and I said she is. We didn't really get to know the true personality of the person until you see them. But that hybrid split is certainly going to be beneficial for businesses, but more importantly, more beneficial to the individual to get the most out of their role.
Yeah, and I think the thing is you have got to focus on the hybrid aspect of it. It's not one or the other. It's interchangeable, and certainly from all the leadership roles I've had in the past, I've always put a lot of emphasis on the individuals in my team, and this is where there's a change in this, because if you're managing that person through Teams or Zoom a lot, you can't pick up on the little traits, so you have to start looking at things differently. It's easy to observe somebody in an office environment. You can sort of see if the body language is saying that there's something wrong there. It's easier to pick up on them. And I think you have to adapt that style, and it is just checking in with them, having that conversation with them. And the fact that we're now not forced into working remotely, then I think if you've got staff that are predominantly working remotely, is catch up with them over a coffee. At first they'll probably think, what's wrong? Why are you wanting to see me? And just keep it, work out of it unless it needs to come up, and just have a chat with them. How's things going? And because there's a big emphasis now as well on looking after people's mental health. And again, you've got to have that where you're talking to that person and finding out what's happening, because there might be all sorts going on in their personal life. And if you're sitting next to them day after day, then those things will get picked up. But if you're working remotely, there won't be. And you just need to make sure that you sort of like put that hand out and find out what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess one of the good things about hybrid or remote working is that when you were looking at kind of staff development and staff training, we can do quite a lot of it online. Nothing beats getting around the table in front of somebody and doing a session in person. I think everybody will admit that that's where the high impact stuff comes from. But there's certain things that you can do online. And you can actually have a larger geographical reach of people. You can train more people, etc. Would you say that businesses that you're working with are actually investing now more in external coaching to come in and support staff development more than what it would have been kind of 2 years ago?
I think so, yeah. And I think, again, going back to what we were talking about at the start of this, is employees are looking for that. And if a business is investing in some external coaching or training coming in and actually spending time with them, then it has such a growth for that business that you can see that the morale of the business goes up, because they become part of it, and that team working together and learning together, they actually start to develop, and that has a massive knock-on effect to the culture. So that it becomes an organisation that they want to be part of, and that they feel as though they are part of it because they're able to put forward suggestions. And I think that's part of the reason why people's looking at this now. And because it's new to a lot of people, even the good leaders, even ones that's got a great track record, are now coming across things that they've never come across before. So it is actually using the expertise of somebody else. And the thing is, somebody coming in from outside the organisation can ask those tricky questions that you probably won't want to ask of somebody because they don't know, so they can ask it in all naivety.
And external support's great because, especially using somebody that's been from industry and now working with multiple businesses, the breadth of knowledge and experience that they can bring from, obviously they're all from industry, but then also working with other businesses who have the same challenge, to be able to then pick things out of the projects that they've run with other businesses, to then do 20% of one, 10% of a